I'm excited to be sitting here with Tyson Gillies. When I look at your resume, it's pretty awesome, man. You know, you're drafted by the Seattle Mariners. Again, we have something in common because I was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. You played for the Phillies. You also represented the Team Canada as well in the World Baseball Classic, which I think is pretty awesome, you know, to get on that stage. But, you know, more than that, you also overcome, 70% of your hearing and being able to play a professional sports and being able to learn how to navigate that through life. As well as becoming a true advocate for perseverance and inclusion and working through mental health with different people. And lastly, I've looked at some of the things. You're an engaging speaker, mentor, and a lot of athletes, helping them navigate those transitions through life and challenges. And so really excited to have you on this podcast, man. Looking forward to diving into your conversation and where you're from and your upbringing.
Oh, amazing. I'm happy to be here. I always love to talk shop, and it's very nice to meet you and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, before we jump in, man, being that we both were drafted by, a Seattle team, ironically, I was drafted in 2005, got to Seattle, and you were drafted in 2006 by the Mariners, yep. And I know what my affinity is for Seattle. So tell me a little bit about your draft process, and not necessarily your draft process, but just let's talk about the city first. What was your thoughts about being in Seattle?
Oh, growing up in North Vancouver and getting into baseball and my love for Ken Griffey Jr., the kid.
Yeah.
So, I always even look at it now as Seattle is our hometown team. I don't care what anybody says. Seattle's my hometown team. And as I was going through and progressing through my career, I wasn't even looking into the draft. I just wanted a college scholarship.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do the whole D1 in the States and, go through that experience. So just hearing my name called to be drafted, one thing was such a surreal experience, but finding out it was where your childhood hero played for so many years, I was on cloud nine, and it was truly special. And as we start to go on in this podcast, you'll know that childhood hero soon enough became a teammate for a few games, so that was pretty cool as well.
Man, that's pretty cool. So we're not going to uncover too much of it too early in the podcast. But I will say, my love for Seattle, man, still there. I love that city. And like I said, we was talking earlier, my wife is from West Vancouver. And so being able to have the best of both worlds, living in Vancouver in the off season, being in Seattle during the season. And then, I guess the third part of that is, the Northwest in general is just a beautiful place to be. And so we would go over 2.5 hours east of Seattle, and we would hang out over there in the summertime in wine country. And so you just can't beat the Northwest. So, man, I try to get back as much as I can, and unfortunately it's been too long. I haven't been back in about a year and a half now, 2 years. And so got to get back out that way.
Oh, absolutely. Got to get back out here, come out in the cave, do some hitting. And
I don't know about hitting, man. I feel like if I swing too hard, I may throw a shoulder out, man. I'm getting old. Yeah. So
I feel that. I feel that too.
Yeah. Well, Tyson, we're going to jump in, man. I want to go back to let's go back to your upbringing. Let's go back to where all this started, athletics and sports. So when you think about your early years and growing up, especially having, early on hearing loss, how did that shape your identity in becoming a superior athlete?
Ooh, yeah, that's a complex question. Obviously my parents didn't figure out that I was hearing impaired until I was about 4.5 years old. So I was already starting to build, some temperamental issues, actually some characteristics with, erratic and high energy. So, finally when they found out, 4.5, that, I had a severe hearing loss, we had to do something to channel that energy. So as we moved up to a small town in Chase, British Columbia, my parents are like, okay, we have to put him in sports. We got to burn this off. So I think right away, that was probably one of the biggest factors in, who I am to this day, was actually going through that unbearable experience as a young kid. Because, from stepping on the field, I always feel like I had so much more to prove than anybody else, just to be looked at as an equal, just to be looked at as, somebody who's not going to be a liability on a roster.
Right.
And that's something I felt so young. And, I got very insecure, with those things. So honestly, I just turned to, the craft of sports, whether it was baseball and hockey. And I spent so much time, in the back, behind the scenes, in the background, just, perfecting that over, friendships and anything else.
3, 2, 1. Parents, the recruiting process is one of the biggest decisions you'll ever face for your child. And talent isn't enough. Coaches are looking for the intangibles, like composure, coachability, communication, and leadership. And that's what Team Q measures. Get clear insights into your child's intangibles so they stand out when it matters most. Go to teamq.io and help your athlete unlock greatness.
As a kid, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, and so I would always hide in the background because I never wanted to be pushed in an area that I would be challenged, So thinking about that, what was some of those things that came up for you early on that you had to work through from an insecurity standpoint?
Well, exactly. You want to be in the background. You want to self-isolate yourself and stay in your comfortable bubble. But as progressing in school with the impairment that I had to be the one sitting at the very front of the class.
Yeah.
And as everyone had their certain rows at the front of the class, I had a special row for Tyson. So, and going through that, and back in the day when they used to have those old school FM systems that, were as big as Zach Morris's Saved by the Bell cell phone. So right away, all attention is on me at every point of the day. So it was really hard to escape. And, so I knew it was going to be a day that, I was going to show up. I was going to be bullied. It was just a question of how hard today.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the character building in that, now hindsight, because as a child, as a kid trying to navigate through it's hard, but when you think about that, what role did the character building play in learning how to navigate those trying times as you were trying to get through school, but then also kind of integrating yourself into sports?
Well, real fast when you go through, that fight and flight at such a young age, it really teaches you how to, how you're supposed to go through and, connect with your emotional regulation, which I think is one of the most important things in this world. And obviously in a sport like football, something that's with such physicality, you guys know that better than anybody. So it really had to make me, obviously just, self-talk and be very, strong within myself. But it was very difficult. Right away, you have so much pride in, what you do every day that, sometimes dealing with the impairment still kind of steers you back to, like we talked about at the beginning, those temperamental issues. And those are things that were great in sports to be very physically active. But when things went wrong, things should go very wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at from that temperamental aspect of things, were you thinking, because I know football is not really big in Canada, like what was that sport that, because I think, baseball is good at hitting the ball, but that physical aggression that you need to kind of get out to channel some of that energy, and with football not being as big as it is in Canada as it is in the US, what other sport did you lean into to kind of get some of that physical aggression out?
Well, my first sport, my first love was hockey. And at that time in hockey, it was still physical, but you weren't allowed full contact till you reached certain ages. And, I felt like I kind of needed to get out some of that aggression. Unfortunately, I did try out for our 8th grade or grade 8 football team, and I was trying out as quarterback. But as soon as spring season rolled around or fall season rolled around, and they found out that I couldn't fit my hearing aids in my helmet, they made me the field goal kicker.
Oh man!
so right away you have one of the most athletic guys on the field, and because I was seen right then at 13 years old already as a liability, they made me kick field goals, and I guess that was the safest place for me.
Oh man, a field goal kicker early. So did that drive you to start trying to look at and figure out, other sports you wanted to focus on?
So I focus on, because of the fall football season, my focus was on hockey. It's my first love. It's my greatest love in sports, to be honest with you. And yeah, that was truly amazing. And, going through all those seasons and those adventures with your teammates and your friends and really starting to get that camaraderie and that locker room feeling was truly special. And as you talked about, I still had a extra source of energy with everything that was going on with hearing impairment. So I had to find something to do in the summer. Yeah. So my parents are like, let's put them in baseball. So I entered baseball around 10 and a half, 11 years old. And the rest is really history. By the time I was 15, I was moving away from home.
Man, I can't imagine. So that means you had to have some really good mentors in your life to really help you find your voice, to be able to handle not just, playing a sport, but also, moving away from home. How was that? What was that transition like? And, were you, moving to the U.S. or were you moving with a host family in Canada? Because I know that's a big thing in hockey where, you go off and then you move off with a host family. And so what was that like for you?
I mean, leaving home at 15 years old for anybody can be, a very tough experience, especially your parents. Your parents, you're 15 years old. I was like, there's still so much they need to, guide you through. They need to teach you. So it was very difficult on my parents. But as far as, the people who were my, my inspiration, my mentors, it was definitely them. Because at the same time, and I think the biggest reason I am who I am today is they never saw their son with a hearing impairment.
Right.
They never allowed me to feel sorry for myself. They never allowed me to get special treatment.
Right.
Here I am. They're like, hey, you got to go play with those kids. Go figure it out. And it was kind of like that. And you know what? I'm so happy it was that way, that they made me, go through those unbearable experiences, because they knew that, if I took the easy way out, that in the long game, that wasn't going to help me at all. And it's all about sustainability as a human. And that's all about, how you actually promote the proper growth.
Yeah, man, that's awesome, man. Did you ever have a time where you was misunderstood that caused some major conflict for you early as a young youth?
Yeah. It's just a typical Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of every week. those things still happen all the time. I mean, the thing about hearing impairment, a lot of people don't know. Obviously, it's one of the most misjudged and misunderstood disabilities on the planet. You can't visually see it like glasses or a cane or a wheelchair or anything like that.
Right.
But so if people are on the side or behind me, sometimes the microphones don't pick up that sound. So, and all of a sudden you with hearing impairment, it does give you a sort of like ADHD, like you're always kind of visual with your eyesight, because that's what we depend on. So you look at somebody and not sure if they said anything, and then you'll just walk away, and then right away you get labeled. So, it was always like that. Back in the youth, I was basically told to, I'll say it in a nice way, I was told to leave preschool. Because after, many times of being dragged to the principal's office for not listening, I finally just stopped one time and slapped my teacher across the face. And sure enough, that was one of the biggest tests for my parents, to be like, okay, there's something going on. Let's go get him tested again.
Yeah.
So that's when they found out that, I had basically a severe, profound hearing loss, and him not listening this entire time, it really wasn't his fault.
Yeah, it's we get put in boxes, and again, different box. I was put in a different box than you were, but it's when you always get those labels and you have to deal with those challenges, it builds this unbelievable character in you, and you figure out how to navigate spaces in a much different way than most people could even imagine. And so I mean, that's a testament to your parents for being able to, recognize that some things or some challenges are going on. And so, which makes you hyper vigilant. I don't know if you have kids, but I do. I have I have 3 kids, and
Nice.
hyper vigilant about, if challenges and things that are going on with them. So we can get, people afraid of labels, but I like labels because now, especially as an athlete, now I know how to attack it. Now I know how to help support, and so, so good for your parents for recognizing that. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, my question now is, as you start to figure out, this baseball world, what was the process and what was the path to get to a place where you can be drafted? How do you get recognized, being that Canada is a hockey place? How did you get recognized in baseball to end up being drafted?
I mean, I left home at 15. I went to join one of the most prestigious programs in Canada, the Langley Blaze. So that's where I started my billing career. And honestly, at that time, like I said, I'm only 4.5, 5 years into the game. So these guys have been playing the game their whole life. So
right
at the very beginning, it was a little bit intimidating, but between there, they were a very, sought after team when it came to, scouts being around the ballpark. And, obviously Greg Hamilton with the junior national team for Baseball Canada. And all those kind of stepping stones of getting on Team British Columbia was one. And then from there, going to the Canada Cup, doing well there, and then getting onto the junior national team where you go down to, the Walt Disney World, and you would play against the Atlanta Braves complex way back in the day. And so you'd be a 16, 17-year-old kid playing against rookie ball professional players from all over the world. So, a lot of scouts around, there's a lot of opportunity that, you get put in the spotlight, and, it's just what you do with that opportunity. And, you only get so many chances, you can't waste any of those shots.
Right. Well, you made the most of your opportunity, and you end up getting yourself in a position where you got drafted by the Seattle Mariners, and then you go on to play for the Phillies. What was that jump like? Again, I'm assuming you were very comfortable with being away from home, but now you're in the big leagues, and you're getting a shot to get to the big leagues. What was that transition and that feeling of, being that you've had some challenges and things like that you had to overcome? Now you got your shot.
I mean, it was bittersweet getting that phone call. First, I found out that one of my best friends and teammate, Philippe Amont, was leaving. It's sad when, your best locker room mate is taken off. But then I found out that it's a package deal and I'm going with him. That part I was truly thrilled with. But I was kind of sad to leave Seattle because I had created such an amazing relationship with them in just 2 short years. Of my second year in spring training, I was already at the exhibition series, like you said, with Ken Griffey, and going through spring training with Felix Hernandez, Adrian Beltre, and all those kind of guys. As a 20-year-old kid who was a 25th round dropped in follow, I had a good opportunity here, I felt.
Yeah.
But when you go on a big blockbuster trade with names like Cliff Lee, Roy Halladay, you got to know right away. I mean, this is truly special. So you got to embrace everything.
Yeah. I mean, to be in the locker room with one of your heroes, man, Ken Griffin, what was that like, sharing a locker room with him and then watching him at his craft day in and day out?
So it was amazing. Honestly, I just came to spring training early. I wanted to get seen, wanted to show the coaching staff that I was there to work, that, I want to move up. And sure enough, they brought me over to one big league game. And then I think I hit a double in my first at bat. And then they brought me the next day, and then brought me the next day. And I ended up playing probably 20 games in that spring training, because a lot of the guys left for the World Baseball Classic. And sitting with Griffey and, sitting with those guys and just picking their brains about the game, it was probably still to this day the only time in my life that I've truly been starstruck. And, it was such an awesome experience. And, Seattle loved it as well. Even one game that Ken didn't travel over at Camelback against the Dodgers, they made me wear his number.
Oh man, those are big shoes to fill. Oh my God.
So here I am walking through the crowds, navigating, a kid you can't even hear people yell at him from the side anyway. Here I am wearing the kid's number. I was like, what could go wrong?
Did they also make you wear his name too? Had the nameplate on the back of that number?
No name.
So how did that day go? Did he bring you luck? Did that number bring you a good day?
It was a fun day. I think everyone was disappointed when they turned around and they realized that it wasn't their, childhood hero. But, it was a great experience. Nonetheless, we had Manny Ramirez playing on the other team. So, I mean, it was a great day to spectate from the bench for sure.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, I mean, I know baseball. When I think about baseball, there's a lot of failure in baseball. Even the best hitters, most of them have some struggles. And so when you think about, your time, how did you, from a composure standpoint, how did you keep that composure through the highs and lows?
I definitely could have been a guy who kept better composure. I'll tell you how it is. I've always been a guy who's been a great teammate. I was the guy who was so hard on myself, though.
Yeah.
Like you said, we go back to, having the chip on your shoulder, always have something to prove. So I spent a little bit of time, locked away in the tunnel during, those 0 for 4s with 2 strikeouts. But, it's really hard because it's a sport that if you do put too much, pressure on yourself and you try and get too high energy and too erratic, like those are the ones that you break down. I mean, it's a game where you have to slow things down because the game starts speeding up as you start progressing and getting to the higher levels. So it's that ability, as you know, in sports. I mean, you start to limit the wasted movements and, start to really gain baseball IQ and become a true professional. Yeah. So, I mean, that's why it takes guys so long in the sport of baseball to really go from the rookies to the big leagues.
Right. And I'm thinking about it, 2005, 2006, sports psychology was kind of starting to come on the scene. Did you guys have a, psychologist, and were you open-minded to even work with a sports psychologist to help you through those highs and lows?
Yeah, we would always have it. The Mariners would always bring somebody into like instructional camp, and, they would really start to work on our mental aspects of the game. And you start to learn, and I start to teach and preach to kids nowadays that, like the best athletes are the ones who can forget the fastest.
Right.
But then I don't just portray that to sport. I portray that to everyday life, like the ones it truly is of not letting, the lows get too low and the highs get too high, and try and be to a point that you're so present, within yourself and within failure that you're able to overcome it and, keep going over those speed bumps as they come to you.
Right. Well, I mean, I think when you think about the mental aspect of the game, it's how do you compartmentalize, or how do you build a toolbox so that when things aren't going your way, that you can have a good balance, and then when things are going your way, you also have a good balance. And so it's all about building that toolbox. And so good for the Mariners for having that in place, because I think now we see more and more of that, and especially right now when the environment has shifted a lot, where there's a lot of pressure on players because of the social aspect of it. People can get to you easily now. A lot of bad comments, good comments, and so you start to read all these press clippings. But then also, it's the money has gotten to a place where you're making good money, so you really want to do well. So how do you keep those pressures, outside pressures, from coming into the game and allowing yourself still to be a kid to play the sport? Because it's still a kid sport at heart, and so we overcomplicate it when it comes to the mental side of what's happening outside the game.
You're right. I mean, we do try to overcomplicate anything, and it's just something as far as hitting is, everyone gets so mechanical and they get so absorbed with, being so mechanical, whether, it's in your swing, and they're focused so much on that mind and their mindset of being in the proper position, going at this time, doing this, instead of, just having that mentality of, I'm a kid, I got a wiffle ball baseball bat in my hand, and I'm going to hit that wiffle ball as far as I possibly can. And if I swing and miss, I'm going to laugh it off and have fun with it. And then I'm going to try again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was the biggest thing is, especially over a big baseball season of, 500 plus at bats. I mean, if you're sitting there and you're dwelling over at bat 1, 2, 3 out of 5, 600, oh man, it's going to be a long year for you.
That's why I never played baseball. I was just going to throw it out there.
That's why I wanted to play hockey. I wanted to stick with that, but yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, that, and then also standing in a batter's box and someone throwing 100 mile per hour ball at me. I think I'm done. I'm out.
We're good.
Yeah, I'm good. Well, as you make your transition from Seattle and to Philly, and I think about the Seattle fans. When I was there, just unbelievable fans. I mean, that place was always rocking. We always look over to Mariner Stadium. I go to some games. That place was always rocking. And now you make that transition over to Philly. Different type of rocket. What was your relationship like with the fans there in Philly, and and is there a comparison to Philly fans and Seattle fans?
Oh, I would definitely have to say that the Seattle fans of the West Coast were much more chill than over there with the Philly fans, the fanatics over there on the East Coast. We'll just say that. And as many people know, in my baseball career, I went through a very tough experience with the Phillies. Obviously that's where my injuries started plaguing, and obviously I got wrongfully arrested back in 2010, which was one thing that it really hurt my career, and it was the most devastating that happened to me in my personal life, for myself, my family, and everyone. And from there, right away, all people's mindsets as they turn to the news and, oh, this has to be true and this happened. And right away, oh, the trade is a bust. And, so I feel like in Philadelphia, for me, nobody ever actually got to really know the real Tyson Gillies, because I feel like I really didn't get the opportunity to really, greet them the proper way I wanted to.
Yeah, that was always tough situation when you don't get to prove yourself the way you want to prove yourself, and especially when it's out of your control.
Yeah, 100%. So that's something we have to live with now, but those are things when I talk to and mentor our kids now, I've been, putting them in, better surroundings and better situations, and, just making sure that we can use anything as coaches and mentors that, can help them on the field, but obviously off the field, because, everything is that perfect mix, to create that, that universal player.
Yeah. I mean, just to stay on that a little bit, if you're talking to this young generation right now, and with all of the outside noise, and how important is it to have a really good circle of people around you to navigate these challenging times, where when you got people who recognize you, they know who you are, someone's always calling, asking, wanting something from you. What would you say to young kids, young athletes now, around the importance of building a really good foundation of people around you?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of the most important things is your circle. And,
where does it start? Where does it start? Where does the circle start first? I asked that question.
I think your circle of friends, or
just the circle of people that you're building a career. So you have mentors, a foundation of financials. You have social media now. Where is that first place that a young athlete needs to start thinking about building the right people around them?
Honestly, for myself, because that's the only way that I can truly, teach somebody, is basically the experience that I've had within myself. And for me, my circle basically just developed organically through, different activities that I'm interested, different, threshold levels that I wanted to push. Mm-hmm. And if I'm pushing these levels, whether it's being, physically in the gym, or it's doing my extra work here outside of the cage, or it's trying to get together with another buddy to work on, a specific sport, or just being active. Those people that I always saw that, were beside me, or, in front or whatnot, I was like, these are the ones that I wanted to be around all the time, because I knew, they were trying to level up at all points, and they were trying to grow and get better. Yeah. So I think when I just started to kind of, put myself out there and, like I said, organically be around these people, and, we're always trying to better, each other. And, ourselves. And that's when they just started to be, some of your best friends and the ones that, just stuck with you the longest, because I think there was a level of trust in there. And I think there was a level of commitment that, carries over to, friendships and so on.
Yeah. I mean, I think nowadays it's more important now than ever to build those authentic relationships, because what ends up happening is the game and everything around you moves so fast, and so you got to have people in your ecosystem that you trust, and in trusting people. We can't do it alone. So you got to have people that you can lean in and lean on in all aspects, and not having the yes men and yes women that tells you what you want to hear, but people who can really become close to you, that can look in and say, hey man, you're screwing up here. Hey, you're doing this great, and being real and honest with you about things.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, Tyson, we're going to jump into a little 2-minute. We have a 2-minute drill I like to do. It's like the 2-minute going into halftime in football. And so it's going to be some easy, soft, tough questions, some rapid fire that, that I think will be really fun here. So are you ready?
Okay. It's rapid fire questions. Okay.
Rapid fire questions. Here we go. Favorite ballpark you ever played in?
Busch Stadium.
Which one?
I say St. Louis. Busch.
St. Louis. Okay, perfect. Yeah. All right. Funniest teammate story that you can share.
Phillies teammate the which?
I said the funniest teammate. A teammate's had funniest teammates. A story about the funniest teammate that you've played with.
Oh, that's a tough one, man. This is an everyday thing.
Something that you could share.
Oh God, I don't know. I think I would have to get back to that one.
All right, we're gonna pass it. We'll skip that one. All right. Next one. What was your go-to walk-up song?
I was always OPP, Naughty by Nature.
All right, you know me. Here we go. The toughest pitcher you ever faced?
That would have to be Aroldis Chapman.
Why?
The lefty, and I had to face him in the Cuban jungle when I was down there in the junior national team, and that was definitely probably one of the most memorable at bats still.
Okay, well, maybe this is the answer to the next question is, one game or moment you'll never forget.
I would have to say probably winning the 2015 Pan American Gold in Toronto on home soil with all my Canadian guys.
That's cool. All right, if you wasn't playing baseball, what would you be doing? If you didn't play baseball, what would you be doing?
I've always wanted to act. I always wanted to be in entertainment.
All right. I'm gonna have to pause and get some of your acting skills out here. All right. Biggest Canadian sport hero that you grew up watching?
For me, that would be Steve Nash. I still think he's one of the most diverse athletes on the planet.
All right, Nash. I'm a Nash fan. All right, last one for you. The first word to come to mind when you think about resilience.
Pardon me, the last one?
I said the first word to come to mind when you think about resilience.
Resilience. Oh, man. I think for me, it's accountability.
All right. Awesome, man. Those are great. And I will tell you, you get the gold star on this because you're my first guest that was like actually rapid fire. We didn't have to call timeouts and to tell a story. So that was perfect.
I was going to call timeout for the teammate one because you and I both know that's a very hard question to answer.
Yeah.
We'll probably answer that one the non-filter network. Yeah,
exactly. There's some stories. That's why I said some stories that you can share because I know a lot of the funny stuff we can't really share, but there are some light ones that we can kind of get into.
100%.
Awesome, man. Well, we're going to jump back into it here. I think about, when we start thinking about leadership and communication, as you were taking the field, what type of leadership style that you were really building as you were going through your career?
Oh, like the leadership that I was giving to people every day as I was going through it?
Yeah, as a leader, you got guys some guys are vocal leaders, guys are lead by example guy. What type of leader did you want to be when you were the guy in the locker room?
So the type of leader, I was the push the pace guy. I mean, absolutely. And like we talked about, basically the things the positives I looked at hearing impairment was, having to give people something else to talk about. So if I'm going to let everybody talk about something else, they're going to talk about how do we catch up with Tyson?
Yeah.
How do we beat him on the sprints? How do we hit the gym more than him? How do we I was the kind of person like that. So I was always setting the goals, whether it was doing the stress test and, the Mariners clubhouse, doing, all the parachute runs and all those things. I was going to be number one. So I think being that way, I think that's how I made teams, was like those little intangibles, those little things.
Right.
And now, that was just me trying to lead by example. But honestly, it was just me playing a game within myself.
Okay. All right. I like that. I was one of those guys as well, push the pace guys that was going to be first in the weight room, first in every drill. No matter who I was going against, I wanted to be first. And so, like you said, I love what you said, that is playing the game within the game, within myself. And so we have a lot in common with that. Now, I've been a part of some losing teams, and those things suck. And really when you're a part of those, your leadership has to change a little bit, So what did good leadership look like when you had some downtime in the clubhouse, what down seasons in the clubhouse versus what did bad leadership look like?
Well, I mean, nothing within you should change. I mean, fortunately, baseball is a team sport. Unfortunately, it's the most selfish, independent team sport out there. So at those points, I mean, you still have to think that I'm playing for 29 other teams as well.
Yeah.
So my mindset, the way I come every day, that doesn't change. Whether it's basically getting some of my teammates and kind of give them that little tap and be like, hey, let's pick it up. I'm like, we got to go. Like, other than that, we can't handhold our teammates through the process either.
Right.
Because, there's a bigger picture here. So, I still wanted to, be that leader by example, but I can't force anyone to follow me at the same time.
Yeah.
And I also know that you still have to worry about, your self-identity. You still have to worry about supporting yourself, supporting your family.
Right.
So those are little, the gray areas in sports that get a little bit difficult. And, a lot of people don't want to talk about it because they're like, oh, I'm just a team guy 100% through and through. And I was like, yes, you are, but you still have to take care of yourself at the same time.
Right. It is tough. It is tough, a tough dynamic you have to navigate. But I mean, as a professional, you have to be a pro. And
you have to be a pro.
You have to be a pro, and that's part of it. All right. So now as you start thinking about your impact that you want to leave on the game, your career ends. Now, how did you start to look at, how do I take what I've learned in the game and my influence and make that transition to start to use my story to inspire others?
Cool. So honestly, the footprint that I left on the game is still, high energy, max effort on every single play. And unfortunately, that really kept the game short for me because you can't spend 150, 160 games a year running 150 miles an hour down to first base.
Right.
And that's just, even though the ball hit back to the pitcher, I mean, I was just that guy. Like I couldn't step back. I couldn't go into, throttle 2, throttle 3. I mean, I wanted to go. That was the only way I felt like I was, making a difference. But being like that and, being around all these, these teammates and diverse, personalities and being compatible with so many people from all across the world. I mean, were the most special things anyways, because now I can take that, away from the game as I've been doing and teaching people about more than just, how to hit a changeup the other way, or, how to, lay out for this ball, get up gunning, like all things like that. So now I can teach people, hey, like, this is what they do in this culture. This is what they do in this culture. And just start to teach, the youth and the kids that we train that there's an entire world out there.
Right.
That, in order for you to be, like a full blown, like, special human being, I think you should learn about all of this. I think you should really navigate the world and put yourself out there. So those are the kind of the superpowers that I take away from the game. And I always try and teach, whether the good or the bad of things that happen to me in the game is teaching moments for the youth. So, because their stories aren't written yet, and I try to tell them, like, this is what happened to me, but I'm trying to tell them is if I had to write it differently, this is what I would do. So I think it's so important telling them, explaining to them, bad things that happen to you and how you would approach them if you were telling your younger self, which your younger self is standing right in front of you right now.
Right. Well, we were talking earlier about, youth and people understanding intangibles. I think we as humans, we can see what, and kind of start to, uncover some things about people when we're around them enough that kind of falls into that category of intangibles. As an athlete, did you know what your intangibles were? Did you even have an inkling or think about intangibles the way you think about intangibles now? And then how did those intangibles transition, help you through the transition? Because I know transitions are hard. When you leave in sports and you've been doing something your whole life, it's hard. So did those intangibles transition over into real life with you?
Oh, absolutely. And we talked about when, I say I joined the Langley Blaze, or, I was trying to make Team BC and trying to make Team Canada. I was only 4.5, 5 years into the game. Like, I didn't really know how to hit yet. I didn't know anything mechanical, but I did the little things right. I showed up, I outworked, I was picking up balls, I was coming early, I was showing up late. I was doing all those things that, showed character and showed good makeup on the field. And that's how I was making teams. I was basically, in hockey, we'd call me like a fourth line or a broomstick. I was that kid, but because I did all those little things right, I was basically Rudy sitting there in the backfield, getting everybody ready to go play the big game. Right. The coaches wanted these guys around because they were pace setters. Right. They pushed our better guys. Yeah. But it also gave me, let me go the distance to stay on those teams and gave me a little bit more time to figure things out. Right. Which I hung around long enough, and then bam, one day, oh, wow, now you are the guy who's hitting. Now you are the guy who's having all this success. And bam, now you're the guy that's drafted. So these are things that I teach these kids now, which, I don't think they, fully entire the big picture of what I look for when I choose my travel teams, because I knew who I was. Right. So it allows me to see things so much differently than having success in this game or that game. I was like, I'm looking at the entire picture. I'm looking at the long game. Right. And that's important for kids to really start looking at the long game. And that's why it's important for us to talk about these different intangibles, because these are the things that's going to translate to life. Most of the time we don't even know that we're building that kind of foundation until it's over, almost over. You're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And then all of a sudden you realize that your skills are transferable. And so now that you're in that sweet spot of working with young kids. Tell me a little about, you talked about a lot about, mentoring, talking to kids and teaching kids. What are you doing now? And is it that thing that gives you that passion that you wake up every day that you really enjoy and love doing? Well, it's so amazing. Never did I think I would be doing what I'm doing now with, the youth facilities. And, I'm so happy to stay in a game that I love. But when we started, taking away the whole mindset of we're going to build amazing, like, little athletes that are the best baseball players. And we started putting it more, hey, we are going to build these amazing, individuals that they're going to learn how to, like we talked about, have success through emotional regulation, learn how to sacrifice, learn how to have discipline, learn what it means to build character. And we take care of those little things as we kind of mentor and guide them through the game. They start practicing more, pushing themselves harder. They start breaking through certain thresholds. They start having more confidence in themselves. We started thinking more about the mindset, and they organically took care of everything on their own.
Right.
Now we are building amazing, incredible athletes, but we went from the source, and the source is going to your mental health. How are you, like, as a human being? How do you show up every day with that presence that you're confident and you want to get better, and you're not shying away from things? You're trying new things day in and day out. So that's what's so special, and those are the things that still give me goosebumps, is seeing these kids so fired up when something we've been working on for 2 years, and they're still only 8, 9 years old, and now they're starting to understand. I mean, that gets me up every morning, and that keeps me going, and I can't wait to further development and meet thousands and thousands of more kids that I've been privileged to do so already.
Yeah. And if I'm hearing you correctly, is helping them start with the little things and understanding their mental well-being and those things, what we call mental performance, understanding those pieces, because if you understand yourself, you're self-aware around that, then all of the other little things that you, from a technical standpoint, becomes a lot easier.
Exactly. They'll start to see things fall into place. And then, they get so excited, and we get excited, and we're building an amazing, coaching staff with us. And the same thing, it's just like we get to build our whole other locker room again. And, that's truly special. It's like I never left the game.
Yeah. How fun is it to see a kid light bulb go off? The things that they've been working on for a long time, and then all of a sudden you just see it, just their face just like, oh, I got it. How much fun is that?
They get they're so surprised. I'm like, yeah. I mean, this was the goal. Like, I hate this. I was like, I'm not surprised. I was like, I've been waiting for this day to happen. I was like, it was going to take time. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. You just had to trust the process. You had to trust me. I trusted that you were going to get there.
Yeah. That's fun, man. I just think about a kid that I was mentoring toward the tail end of my career, and we was working on grouping things, and for him to, for the game to slow down for him, and all of a sudden when it started to slow down for him, and he looks back, and it's like you could just see it on his face. It's like, oh, thank gosh, I finally got it. It makes sense. Yeah. And so those are always fun moments, man. Well, good for you. Well, let me ask you a question. What's the name of your organization?
We are T21 Performance. We actually formally started our name as Travail. Travail Development is what we call it, but Travail is the French word, is, it means an unbearable experience, sacrifice. So we're like, this is perfect for, our athletes, because you are going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to go through many, many unbearable experiences. And if you see our logo, it's basically like 2 balancing balls with like a platform on top. And everything from the beginning is about, building, basically building youth fundamentals for a sustainable platform. That's so awesome, it's always working from the ground up, so they can level up. And so, it's been super exciting, and we're continuing to take this as far as we can take this.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, definitely going to be rooting you guys on, man. And I think I have a couple more questions for you before we wrap up here. One that I like to really do toward the end here is when you think about your career, think about all the things that you've done, all the things you've had to overcome, what are, a couple of intangibles that come to mind that has made you who you are today?
I think it's basically, for me, is I've always been running my own race. Growing up with the hearing development, and I always was, from day one, I was the only one I knew. And even till this day, I'm still one of like the very few shortlisted people that are in my, environment every day that, I feel like I can, relate to. So a lot of it has just been being able to kind of put my head down, blinders on, and just know that, I'm racing against myself, and, putting those things forward, and know that, that it's always looking at, the man or the woman in the mirror, and looking at yourself and being able to show up and be accountable, and know that in order to, separate yourself or, have success, like, you just have to show up. You have to want it.
Yeah. Work ethic goes a long way.
Yeah.
All right, man. Tyson, this has been awesome, man. Last question for you. When you think about your young self, if you had to go back and talk to your younger self, what would you tell him?
I would tell my younger self to be a little bit more patient. Be a little bit more patient, and what I know now. I was way too hard on myself. Whether it was my younger self, whether it was myself playing professional baseball, whether even it's probably every day now. I'm still a little bit too hard on myself. I still, instead of just allowing myself to show up and, be accountable, and I want to force things too much. And you have to trust life's divine timing. You have to let things fall into place. You have to let them happen in the way that they're supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then you're always going to stay presently, and you're not going to let, like we talked about, those lows get too low and those highs too high. You're going to be even keel, and you're going to be able to, sustain internal happiness, what we're all searching for.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, Tyson, man, this has been a fantastic conversation with you. I really appreciate you jumping on Intangible Podcast. I mean, you guys heard it here, from Tyson. Work ethic, be a pace pusher, but also in the mix of it all, find a way to be patient with yourself, because it all going to happen when it's supposed to happen. And being patient doesn't mean you don't work. It's just, just trust the process. To continue to trust the process. So, man, I really appreciate you sharing your story, and really appreciate you joining us on Intangible Podcast. It's been awesome.
Hey, it's been amazing to be here. Thanks for having me on. Hopefully see you in Vancouver very soon.
Absolutely, man. I'm going to look you up when I get there. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely should.